does it take to win a national championship in college football today? For most of you, you probably said quarterback. Got to have that X factor, gunslinger mentality, slicing and dicing, picking apart defenses. And I will tell you, you're completely wrong. It's all about your trenches, your offensive line and your defensive line, and the depth of those offensive and defensive lines, which is why you see every single transfer portal cycle, the guys up front, the big bullies, get the big paydays. And Jahiem Oatis is going to be another one. Hasn't played since October, but you got to remember that this was a 4-star top 40 talent coming into Tuscaloosa. And somebody in the SEC potentially could land him to be the X factor for their team in the hunt for a college football playoff. So who are the favorites to land the former Crimson Tide sensation? Let's go break it on down and welcome on into SEC Unfiltered. It's Cole Thompson here. Make sure that you like the video, smash that ring notification, and of course, hit subscribe because we're talking college football, transfer portal, playoff, NIL, anything going on in recruiting every single day. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Make sure if you want the back and forth banner to go along with me, it's at Mr. Cole Thompson. And check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at RHOBACK. The holiday season is right around the corner, and what better gift to give someone in your life than a RHOBACK pullover, fleece, hoodie, jogger, shorts, whatever you see fit. So go to RHOBACK.com, use the promo code SECU at sign up to get 20% off your very first purchase. 20% off when you use the promo code SECU at RHOBACK.com this holiday season. Jahiem Oatis is a stud. Now, here's the thing. He barely played in the Georgia game. He barely played in the Wisconsin game. If I'm not mistaken, I think he only played 25 total snaps in 2 of the bigger games to begin the year. And it was evidently clear that the way that Kane Womack ran his system and the way that Otis wanted to be utilized, they did not mesh. They did not see eye to eye. They kind of were bucket heads. And so he decided to enter the transfer portal and take a year of eligibility. So he redshirted. That's a good thing. That means you got him for 2 years of eligibility left. Guys, he was a former top 40 player. And I don't care if he's ever going to develop into what we saw when he was a freshman, bulldozing on out in Pete Golding's system. He was a top 40 recruit. This is a stud. This is somebody that, if you know how to work properly, will be an enforcer in your defensive line. He will be a dude that maybe just comes in on third down and shuts down the rushing attack and makes offenses one-dimensional. He may be a dude that gets into the backfield and says, hello, quarterback, you're going on down. Hopefully you enjoy grass. That's the type of talent that a guy like Jahiem Oatis can be. He's just got to be used properly. And there's a team by the name of Colorado where there is a coach by the name of Primetime Sanders that wants him. He may get him because of his defensive line coach is Warren Sapp. And I'll tell you what, if you remember what Warren Sapp did in the day back when he was at Tampa, anybody and everybody who plays defensive tackle should want to learn underneath that guy. But there are some teams in the SEC that are going to be involved, including one that is a favorite. Let's start off with the up-and-comers. I think Tennessee. You got to be able to give your offense a second push defensively. They've proven that they can win with trench warfare. Tim Banks is not getting a job elsewhere. He's not about to become a head coach at the group of 5 level. This is a person that is only going to look to build off of his success. And they're going to lose a lot of players this offseason to the NFL draft, including James Pierce. A guy like Otis, if he comes on in, he's a great depth piece. This was one of the more dangerously unique, dynamic systems that was rotating in defensive tackles, defensive linemen, straight up edge rushers, guys that were third down blitzers. He could be that guy that is your straight nose tackle, your straight 3 tech, pile drives on back, makes play after play in the run game, and is an effective pass rusher in a very limited capacity. The Volunteers want to build off of this. Do you know how pissed off people are right now that they don't get to host a playoff game? They have to go to Columbus, Ohio when they had the same amount of losses, and one was actually probably pretty significant compared to the other one, or Michigan one. They want to build off this. They have the quarterback in Nico Iamaleava, who's supposed to be the second coming. They love the recruiting class they have. They had another top 15 cycle. More importantly, they have a foundation set in place. But you need some veterans to be the anchor of this defensive line. I look at a place like Tennessee as a dark horse. It has to be in the conversation. Florida's got to be in the conversation too. Why? Because of, again, give as much money to Billy Napier as possible. Write him a blank check and say, here's how much you have in allocations for NIL funding because you got a quarterback. When you get a player like DJ Lagway, everything is about building around him so that way you can guarantee you leave no doubt. There is no doubt that if you get DJ Lagway the right weapons on offense, build him a defensive front that's going to force a ton of 3-and-outs, he has an opportunity to be special. He has an opportunity to be considered one of the greatest that has ever walked through the swamp, eventually lead his team to a college football postseason appearance, maybe a national title, and bring a couple of hardware pieces along the way with them. You got to build them up. And I think about this defense with what you have in Ron Roberts, what you have with Austin Armstrong, what these two, their nuance versus their old school seasoned brains working together to get a guy like Otis who feels old school, but in a very unique, nimble body at 6'5", 365 pounds. I get him to be my anchor as the 3 tech and run support. I'm already doing half my job. I'm already in a great situation. He may only play 38 stats per game, but you want to know what? 38 stats per game, you may see 14 pressures in those 38 snaps. You may see a couple of big-time stops at the line of scrimmage that forces a 3 and out. You may get some pressures to where the quarterback is flustered, leads to a turnover. If I'm Florida, I'm doing everything possible to give my offense a second win, and I feel like that has to happen. Texas A&M has got to be on this list too. I highly doubt he goes to Texas A&M. But what do we know about Mike Elko? The dude is the czar of developing defensive tackles, developing defensive linemen. The history books back it up. Jaden Peavy, DeMarvin Leal, Nick Scorton right now, Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner are all going to be Sunday players or already are in the NFL. You don't think that that's a place to where you look and say, College Station, the money is going to be promising. They're trying to build off of an 8-4, potentially 9-4 season. They have an offense that they have a lot of faith in. They have a defense with a coach that is going to get the best version out of me. You continue to see the growth and maturation as a player joins in with the 12th man and then leaves the 12th man in better situations to go to the NFL and become a household figure at the next level. Why would I not want to consider that? Why would I not want to consider? And then you got to remember Holman Wiggins, who's the wide receivers coach at Texas A&M. He was at the staff at Alabama when Jahiem Oatis initially signed. So maybe you tell him, hey, I know that he's not your guy. I know that you're an offensive coach. Let's figure out how do we get him down here, because I still feel like when we lose guys like Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, when we're losing guys like Shamar Stewart, when we're losing guys potentially like Shamar Turner, Nick Scorton, we got to get better in our trenches. We added in some really good players in this last cycle. We added in some really good players in our first cycle. But I got to get as many household names to fortify my trenches if I want to be a contender in 2025. And the last team, and the team that I think is ultimately going to land him if he sticks around in the SEC, it's Ole Miss. For starters, who's the defense coordinator there? It's Pete Golding. What Pete Golding is known for? Well, back in the day, ladies and gentlemen, before he ever decided to head on down to Hottie Toddy land, he was Alabama's defense coordinator, and he was their top recruiter, and he was the guy that landed Jahiem Oatis to Tuscaloosa to begin with. Number two, there's a proof of concept. J.J. Pegues, Jared Ivey, Walter Nolan. All of those guys are going to make it to the NFL. Every single one of them is probably going to be a top 100 pick in next year's draft. I would say Walter Nolan is going to be a first-round pick. By every account that I've spoken to with scouts, with media members, with people that believe that the transition period will be fine and sustainable, him going to Oxford was the best decision possible because he got on the forefront as the anchor of a defensive line that ranked inside the top 3 in pass rush and in run blocking. So there's a proof of concept that when you transfer into Oxford, you're going to leave better prepared for the NFL. And then finally, the schedule's manageable. Ultimately, don't you want to win a championship? Don't you want to say that you made it to the college football playoff? I know. Lane Kiffin shot himself in the foot this past year. Ole Miss should not have lost to Kentucky. They shouldn't have lost to Florida. We see one of those games turn from an L into a W. Ole Miss might be the most dangerous 2-loss team in the college football playoff, and I'll sure as hell tell you that nobody wants to face off against them. But it's all about building up past this. They just finished with their best recruiting class underneath Lane Kiffin. They're going to continue to bring in the right pieces in the portal. They have a quarterback that they believe in. They have some defensive players that are going to be back in 2025. It's all about making that next step. You no longer want to be called a rebuilding season out in Oxford. You want to be called a retooling year. And I think a guy like Jahiem Oatis would add that value. In fact, I would say he probably ups that value. The way that you lose a player like Princely Uwan Manley Ellen, the way you lose a guy like J.J. Pegues, a Walter Nolan, you find guys that can easily come on in and be the plug-and-play additions for them. That's Otis for Walter Nolan. I'll tell you what, Ole Miss's schedule is still going to be manageable. You just turn out a couple of games that were in the swamp and on the road and bring them back home instead of going to Columbia, South Carolina. You welcome in South Carolina. You can win. You can win 10 games. You can be in the college football playoff. I don't think anybody's doubting that. If I am Jahiem Oatis, I am absolutely at least hearing out my former defensive coordinator. because he was the reason why at one point in 2022, people viewed me as the next big time name down in Tuscaloosa. I want to get back to feeling like that. I want to get back to feeling like that I am the alpha. I am the best in college football. You will respect my name. Warren Sapp can do that, but you already got the taste of it when you were working with Pete Golding. If Ole Miss is smart, they make him an offer that he can't refuse. But let me know in the comment section down below, where do you think Jahiem Oatis ultimately lands? Do you think he has an opportunity to go to a place like Ole Miss? Maybe Texas A&M? Maybe LSU gets involved? Like, rate, review, subscribe. Make sure that you're following us on all the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Download the podcast version of the show and make sure you check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. I am Cole Thompson. Until next time, folks, just remember, the transfer portal is just college football's free agency. Bye.